Dr. Dawn Michael, and today we're going to be talking about how to argue with your spouse. And if you're married and you've been in a relationship for a while, or you're just starting out, couples argue. It's very normal to have an argument. And in fact, sometimes it's good to have an argument because it brings to surface things that may be bothering you that you may not want to come out and say. And it kind of boils to the surface, and sometimes it really helps to just get it out. But the most important thing is the way you argue. And today I'm going to talk about how to effectively argue so that the other person is listening and so that you're resolving problems and you're not just arguing for the sake of someone being right and someone being wrong. Back in college, when I did my bachelor's degree, I did it in speech communications. And it really was a great experience because I was also on the speech and debate team. I traveled around the United States, and I learned really the art of a debate. And it has helped me teach this to my clients when they come into my office. It's some of the things that we go over is how to effectively communicate, but also how to effectively argue. And there is a skill set that people do need to learn because most people innately don't know how to argue. And it really does help to resolve the problem. Because ultimately, when couples argue, it means that they're upset about something. It means that there's something that isn't being resolved. And that's why you'll see somebody coming back to the same topic over and over again. It may come out in different ways, but really it just means it's not resolved. So let's start with finances. I'll give you an example here, because this is one of the big issues that people have, and that is perhaps you have someone in the house, one spouse is a saver, the other one is a spender. And I'll tell you, if you're a couple just getting involved with each other, you're newly married or you're going to think of getting married, it's super important to sit down and talk about finances and really how you see yourself in the future financially, how you save money, how you spend money, if you're responsible, because this can be a big problem in a relationship if one person is irresponsible with money and the other person is not. And remember too, when you're trying to have an argument, many times you're trying to get your point across and you really want the other person to understand you and to resolve the problem or change to a certain extent. This isn't about one's ego. This isn't about, feelings of hurt. This is about getting to a resolution that is beneficial for the marriage, not just you as a person alone, but what you're resolving is benefiting the marriage. And that is another important thing to think about when you are trying to get into the argument. So before I go back into the finances, another important aspect is you really need to invite your spouse in to a discussion. So let's say you're upset about something, just to approach them and throw it at them is not going to get a good result because they may not be ready to talk about it. They may have had a hard day at work. They may have been dealing with the kids all day. They may not be feeling good. Really, you don't know what the situation is. So it's the best thing to do is to invite them into the conversation. Say, I'd like to talk to you about something. Is it a good time to talk about it now? If they say yes, then you can go ahead. If they say no, then you say, okay, when would be a good time? And the two of you come up with a time where you can sit down and talk. The other thing is you want to present factual information. So if there's something that you want them to change their mind about or to understand, it's best to have some facts with you. So let's go back to arguing about money. Let's say that you want to pay all of your bills and you've both decided that once your bills are paid, you have a certain amount of money left over. What are you going to do with that money? Perhaps one person wants to put it in the savings account. Perhaps the other person wants to buy something for the house. This is where you really need to negotiate. Now, let's say that you really want something for yourself. So you have to think about, okay, if I really want something for myself, how is this benefiting the marriage as a whole? Well, perhaps you getting something for yourself is a way to relieve your stress, which would benefit the marriage. Or it's something that would make you feel a little more happy, and then you would be more easygoing with certain things in the marriage. So it's not necessarily that you can't buy things for yourself, but how is that going to affect you, and how is that going to make it better in the marriage? So that's something to think about, and that is maturity as well. Is really explaining that to your spouse, and that's important so that they understand where you're coming from. The other thing is, do you want to go on a vacation? So that's a negotiation. Okay, let's go on a vacation. How much do we want to spend on the vacation? And so when I say facts, you're actually bringing some numbers with you, you're bringing information with you, you're having a discussion about it, and it's not just, I want this, or I feel that, or it's because it makes me feel better. Okay, that doesn't work. That's just the other person's going to shut down. And unfortunately, in some relationships, if you have somebody who maybe doesn't really like to fight, and another person has a stronger personality, and you feel like you're just going to throw it at them and get your way, the reality is you're not getting your way. You're just simply bullying them, or you have a louder voice, or you're more aggressive. And that in the end is just going to lead to serious resentment, and that is not resolving the issue. So there's some basic rules when you get into an argument or a discussion. That is, keep your voice down, never name call. Okay, this is like the end all to a discussion that ends in absolutely no resolution, is name calling, or personally putting the other person down, or bringing up past events that that are different than what you're discussing. So let's say you have unresolved past events. Don't throw it into this one and kind of combine them, because again, that's not really the purpose of this particular debate, discussion, or argument. So you really need to keep in mind the game rules, both of you. So hopefully, if you are sitting and watching this with your spouse, the two of you can understand this information. Because once the name calling starts, the voices raised, all of that, that is no longer a healthy argument or a healthy debate. That is bullying, and that never works. So let me talk about another topic that couples come into my office, and this one is really important because many times it's about intimacy or the lack of intimacy. And I'm going to be talking about intimacy and sexual intimacy because they are two different things. So many times women like intimacy, and that would be things that are happening outside the bedroom. I'm not saying that men don't like it too, but generally when I've worked with couples, for the most part, it's women who will say that they want to be more affectionate outside the bedroom. It could be kissing, holding hands, hugging, but it also can be a husband listening to what his wife says, not necessarily giving her an answer, but sometimes just listening. It could be spending time with her, going on a date, doing some family stuff, maybe helping her with a chore that she feels stressed or overwhelmed with. These are all intimate acts. And if the intimate acts are there outside the bedroom, women are more opt to want to have sexual intimacy in the bedroom. And so if you're a man and you feel like you're not having sexual intimacy with your wife, you're not having sex, it might be helpful to do some more of the intimate stuff outside the bedroom. Now, from the woman's perspective, and I hear this from guys all the time, they say, well, I don't even know when we're going to have sex. We haven't had sex for a while, and I'm getting frustrated, and I don't want to pressure her, but I want to know. And so it's really important that from the woman's perspective, you tell your husband, okay, we're going to have a sex date. We're going to have a sex date, whatever, Monday morning or on the weekend. And so he's not having to wonder when you're going to have sex. And so he can not worry about that. and then he can help you with the other things that you need. I do have some more videos on this. I go into it in detail. So if you want to go through the video log, there's some of my intimacy practices, and then there's different types of ways that men and women communicate with each other on an intimate level. But it is important to sit down and talk about this. So this is one of those discussions that you would have. It wouldn't be when you're sexual or you're horny or you're, completely angry. It's when you're going to sit down, you're going to be calm, and you're going to talk about and say, hey, listen, what can we do to negotiate with each other that we're both going to feel good? And, I've heard some people say, oh, it's a trade-off. It's a commodity. I'll buy her something and then she'll have sex with me. That doesn't work. I mean, it seems, like something that people do, and I have heard couples say that, but really the sexual intimacy that you share together, it should be just that. It shouldn't be like a trade-off that way or a commodity. That just doesn't lead to an enjoyable experience, and it really doesn't promote healthy intimacy in the marriage. So the trade-off I'm talking about is intimacy outside the bedroom, where the woman feels close to her husband. She feels like, oh my God, he's doing this for me. I didn't even have to ask. He gave the kids a bath tonight. I didn't even have to ask him. And now I'm not stressed out about that. And I'm feeling much more relaxed. And now I really do want to have sex with him. And many women operate on that. I mean, they really, truly, that is how they feel. So that's one of the things that I go over with couples, that I think it's really important, if the two of you are watching, that you sit down and you discuss those things openly. The other thing with getting into an argument is you really have to take your ego out of it, okay? Again, I brought this up. It's not that someone's right and someone's wrong, because that doesn't work either. It has to be that you are both getting something out of the discussion, that you're both resolving something. And so if you're listening to what your spouse says, then acknowledge what they're saying. And then you can come back and counter and say, okay, I have these facts and I feel this way about it. And this is maybe why I do want to do it or I don't want to do it. But for both of you, if you get into a stance where you're stubborn and you're not willing to negotiate, or you're not willing to move this way or that way, that again doesn't work. You have to be flexible with one another. That's what makes for a long-lasting relationship for most couples, is that they're flexible with one another. And they'll give a little, they'll take a little, and that really is part of a healthy relationship. So today I'm going to leave it at that. I will revisit this again, because I think this is a very important topic, and it's very important that couples have healthy arguments, that they resolve their arguments. And you'll notice, if you've been in a marriage for a long period of time, sometimes you'll have a reoccurring argument that never gets resolved. And those are the ones that are a little bit more stubborn, and you really need to break those down and figure out exactly what it is that's bothering you, and try to really explain to your spouse why it's bothering you and what they can do to resolve it. So you're being very, very clear. And I tell this to my clients all the time. You cannot read each other's minds. You absolutely don't know what each other is thinking, and don't even try to guess. It's really important to ask. And there shouldn't be an expectation, oh, if he cared about me, he wouldn't do those things, or if he cared about me, he would remember. I do hear that a lot from women, and I often say, well, you really need to tell him exactly what it is you want him to care about. Tell him exactly what it is you want him to do. Give him instructions. Now, if you have, and you've given it to him over and over again, and he's still not doing it, then perhaps you, if you're listening, you need to start paying attention and figure out why you don't want to do something, or perhaps why you're being stubborn or resentful, because that can take hold as well. Okay, that's it for today. If you like my video, please give me a thumbs up. It really does help if you give me a thumbs up, because it Actually makes the video visible to more people, as well as subscribe to my channel and leave a comment. I believe everyone deserves to have a healthy sex life, and so do you.